Hey guys, and welcome back to part 4 of the Castlevania Let's Play. So, even after a whole part of catching up on stuff I thought I'd missed out and then was like, aha, I caught it, there's still more. So, stairs in Castlevania. If you don't understand Castlevania, this sounds like the dumbest topic to bring up. And if you know Castlevania, you're probably screaming fucking finally at the screen. So stairs are one of the most infuriating things in pretty much every 2D Castlevania, whether it's the classic style, like this original is of course, or the more open world Metroidvania style, although less so in that second version. But basically stairs, and this is going to sound weird until you play 2D platformers, you can only get onto stairs from the top or bottom. And again, if you're thinking of stairs as in real life, that makes complete sense. But if you're looking at stairs from a 2D perspective, like in Castlevania, suddenly you realise it feels like you should be able to jump onto these. You know, you should be able to jump where Simon just was there and get on. You can't. You have to press up or down, depending on your position, whether you're trying to go up or down, at the top or bottom of the stairs. You can't get off when you're on, and you can only face in the direction you're travelling. Which, in the one hand, makes sense, checks out as how stairs work in general, but in terms of a 2D action platformer can feel clunky and restrictive in a genre where generally physics are more of a suggestion. But that is just one level of frustration that can appear in this game. But yes, here are the Axe Knights and Blood Skeletons we were talking about in the last part. Again, I was going to say they don't look like they should cause much of a challenge, but I just died to them, so there we are. Again, a lot of the stuff I talked about in the previous parts where, oh, you just do this, you just do that. It's not a case of knowing what to do, it's a case of knowing to do it and then responding to it in kind as it happens is the real challenge of Castlevania. And again, that's something that I and obviously other fans of the series love. But, you know, if you aren't a fan of the series, or if you've tried the series and didn't like it, that's probably something you don't love. That there is what feels like a lot of trial and error, followed by just a lot more error until you finally get it right. You know, and again, you can figure out maybe one element, and then, like there, for example, well, that's actually a great example of what I was just trying to talk about. Oh, that castle, that candle's in the air, jump and whip it, except, oh, there's that Axe Knight there, and he's throwing axes at these different levels. So again, you've just got to consider what's around you and how that interacts with Simon as a player character when you try to interact with anything else. So again, it is just thinking before you act and considering your actions and how said actions interact with the things around you, which, again, easier said than done. Not going to pretend it's just... I don't want to sound like just a get good type of guy when I'm talking about this. But sincerely, I do think that a lot of the mistakes people make are just trying to go through too fast. And by people, I'm including myself there. Looking at the footage again, because in case it wasn't obvious from my last couple of episodes, this is a post commentary. I'm recording footage and then going back to it and recording commentary over it. Looking at my own footage, I can see places where, you know, that wasn't an optimal thing to do. If you looked at the situation for even half a second more, you could have probably seen that. And again, maybe that speed of understanding what to do comes from my experience, but again, that experience comes from observation of several attempts previously. Over the, again, as I mentioned, almost a decade, if not more, I've been playing this game. And I want to be clear, you don't need to have been playing this game for a decade to make the observations I've made. When I say I've been playing it for a decade, I mean, you know, every couple of years I'll go back to it. So obviously if you're a kid in the 80s and you'd rented this game from a Blockbuster or whatever, you'd have and it was all you had for the weekend, you'd probably have got a lot more in that short span of time than I did from 1 or 2 playthroughs over a couple of years. But it really is just one of those moments of, again, slowing down and thinking. And so here, for example, how close I am to a life threshold, maybe it would have made sense to jump while I had that axe, jump and throw it to kill that blood skeleton, and then got the one up, and then had a little bit more freedom to play as I thought was maybe more optimal in other situations, rather than playing for points like I was doing for a little bit of that section there. And again, this game is challenge. I think I said that this game has a reputation for being tough, and that's true. That doesn't mean that it's not a warranted reputation, but that means that I think a lot of the situations, and I shouldn't have picked up that stopwatch there. Again, slow down and consider. But more just, and again, picking up that stopwatch, a bad move, because, you know, didn't give me the advantage I needed going into that fight with Death himself. Oh, that's one other thing I should mention, actually. Sort of, having spoken previously about cutting up deaths and stuff, this is not the first attempt at this level I've made. I didn't get to stage 15 on my first try through stages 13 and 14. But yeah, oh gosh, I forgot where I was. Basically, slow down, consider, and again, I'm probably not playing Castlevania. I'm not playing Castlevania in the way it was designed to be played, which is you are a kid who is renting this from some form of video store, and you know, this is what you're doing for a weekend. I'm playing it in 20-minute bursts where muscle memory and, you know, specific small details get lost in the fuzz of going to work and, you know, family commitments and whatnot. But yeah, the boss of this level is Death himself. The Grim Reaper takes orders from Dracula. Again, those who have watched the anime of... I don't know why I said again. I don't think I actually brought this up in a previous recording. Those who have watched the anime version of Castlevania, which is based on Castlevania 3, and then its direct sequel that came like 2 decades after... No, like 3 decades afterwards? Will know Death as one of the fucking funniest and coolest characters ever. And he kind of is that in the games. One of the things I like about that anime, which is, as a Castlevania fan, I'm one of those people who is a bit of a purist and I've got mixed feelings on the show. One of the things I love about that show more than anything is how its version of Death / the Grim Reaper is solely its own interpretation and yet does nothing to contradict the version in the games. It's really fun and inspired and is absolutely the right way to update that that character and that worldview for you know, I'll say the 21st century, because the first game that came out was a PS2 game that was slightly behind the times, but the last version that had Death not as Patrick Stewart playing Patrick Stewart, but we'll get to Lords of Shadow when we get to it. Oh, spoilers for Lords of Shadow, I guess. Yeah, outside of the reboot, Death in the anime is really accurate to the games and yet completely different. It's kind of wonderful. But now I'm rambling about the anime because you're just watching me completely fail to do any sort of adequate job at this level. Which is, I can admit it, the downside of how I've decided to play, or not play, but show the game. That, while what I wanted to show was an authentic version of, hey, you know, you'll have to retry stuff, it does mean that there's a lot of repeated footage. But I think it weighs out in that it lets me talk about how this stuff, you know, plays with the wider series and the more direct influences and other stuff that isn't just exclusively what's being shown on the screen. Because if I was just saying, this is what's happening on the screen, that might be a little repetitive. But yeah, if you're already bored of what I'm showing you on the screen, thank God I cut the 40 minutes to an hour of previous attempts of this level, because you wouldn't like that. Anyway, so I'm about to discover a horrible truth, and that is that the holy water, which is the best sub-weapon in pretty much every Castlevania, not the best sub-weapon for Death. And I've spent so many attempts trying to get a triple shot holy water to the Death boss fight, and turns out wasn't even the optimal strategy. Not the dominant strat, as game theorists #NotMatPat would say. Yeah, game theorists, to be clear, it just means someone who strategizes and theorizes about gameplay, which is a really intelligent channel title by MatPat. Yeah, as you can see there, I thought the sickles were a move the Grim Reaper had to perform, and technically they are, but he can perform them before/as he's spawning. So being able to stun lock him doesn't matter because the sickles can just keep flying at you. And as you have probably seen, the sickles are the problem in that Grim Reaper fight. The Grim Reaper himself is a slow-moving target that pauses every couple of seconds. That invincibility there showed you what I was talking about, where that sort of bluish outline around Simon should be flickering, and it doesn't. I said what I was talking about. What I was talking about, like, a full part ago. But yeah, functionally, that's what I was talking about with the capture footage. I think because it records at sort of 60 and these older games play at 30, just every couple of seconds they switch which flicker frame is showing, if that makes any sense. But yeah, Holy Water is not the optimal sub-weapon for death. The cross is, because you can just throw out loads and they destroy the sickles. And again, as I was talking about before I ADHD'd myself into talking about something else. Oh god, the timing on these are really frustrating with just a leather whip rather than a chain whip. But yeah, as I was saying, the sickles are the real problem with Death, because he's a boss that moves slowly, stays stationary, and then moves slowly. It's the fact that when he stays stationary, he summons 3 sickles that fly directly at you, stay stationary, and then fly directly at you. And no matter how many are already on the screen, he will always, I believe, spawn 3. So if you don't immediately get rid of the 3 sickles, there will always be more than 3 on screen, and it's just a nightmare to try and keep a track of those sickles while also avoiding and then dealing damage to Death himself. That's something I wanted to bring up actually. The name Death himself is something that a lot of Castlevania fans, myself included, call this character. But I think officially he's called the Grim Reaper. It's just that the previously mentioned AVGN, the Angry Video Game Nerd, referred to him as Death himself semi-jokingly as such in his review, and the name kind of stuck. Also, that is one of the big problems with not just this game but 8-bit games as a whole. You can beat the boss, and because there's an extra stipulation after beating the boss to complete the level, I beat Death and then still died and had to beat Death a second time. But yeah, again, as I said, that's just a thing with 8-bit games in general, but in a game as precise and challenging as Castlevania, really feels like a punch in the gut that you can and sorry, there's a pause here because I you know, I have a life outside of Castlevania, shocking as it may seem. But yeah, it's frustrating that you can technically beat the boss, and then because the projectiles are still on the screen, even though he's dead, the projectile can kill you, and therefore you don't count as beating the boss, which does make a fair amount of sense. It's just feels really frustrating. Also, wow, that is one of the luckiest series of shots and here's where you can see the capturing capture software really messing up. The sprites of the sickles are technically flickering. Also, moments captured right before tragedy. That sickle, given half a second more, would have killed me. But that is it for this part of the game. And indeed it for this part of the Let's Play. Thank you very much for watching.